Folks, the following conversation is with the very playfully profound David Gandelman. Who is he? Well, someone first put me onto him back in the spring of 2021 by looking in on Insight Timer there. And he has this knack of taking very heavy, or what could be very heavy, complex topics and imbuing them with a lightness and joy and humor. In fact, someone in the comments of one of his lives this week put, "You're a really fun teacher." And I thought, what a fantastic accolade that must be to receive. I took his level 1 intuition training, and then last year his 9-month meditation teacher training. He's a master of connecting people and of networking. He's a very successful entrepreneur with several wonderful businesses, conscious creations, which we speak a lot about. But I think more importantly, he's a master of enabling people to better connect with themselves. And certainly I've enjoyed some wonderful epiphanies and powerful shifts on account of his guided meditations, and I really thank him for that. His meditations have been streamed over 30 million minutes from the Insight Timer app. And what happens when the one asking the questions has the mirror reflected back on her? Well, trust me, I had the sweat marks to prove it. I really hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Enjoy. David Gandelman, my favorite meditation teacher. Thank you so much. You and several hundred others. So
Oh,
thank
wow.
you so much.
I feel so special now. It's like you're my third date of the day, and this has been pretty good.
I was just helping you get out of the square. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and speak to me today. I'm so appreciative. I think perhaps the
Oh, my
first and
pleasure.
oh, bless you. I think perhaps the first and perhaps most important question would be is when am I going to be enlightened then, David?
Well, that depends on your race and origin of country and gender.
Okay.
Yeah, there's an order of
Okay.
things.
Right. A hierarchy.
That's right. Obviously, men first, and so we've got to talk. No, yeah, that is a question that does go through most meditators' minds. It's like, when am I going to actually have a breakthrough or an awakening
Mm.
or figure this out? Sometimes people spin in their meditations for years. They feel like they're making no progress. And there really is that question: when the heck am I going to get it? Uh,
It's funny I don't have that question because I just I just think, yeah, in another lifetime is the answer.
well, no, it could definitely be this lifetime. Let's not put ourselves down on the enlightenment path. I do have a request before we get too deep.
Mm.
There is some new app or filter. I don't know what it's called, but it takes conversations like this and it turns us into babies. And then
Okay.
it'll be my voice and your voice, but us, and it looks just like us as babies. We have got to
Oh
make a
wow.
clip of we
Okay.
got to make a clip of this as babies, and share it. Anyway, I digress.
When am I going to be enlightened, David?
Wah, wah.
Oh dear me. Okay. So you have this amongst many things that you create that I love. One of the things on YouTube is a podcast at the moment called Conscious Creators. What would you say is a conscious creator? What
Well,
does that encapsulate?
we could start by saying it's the opposite of an unconscious creator. So that might be a good place to start. So an unconscious creator is somebody that creates because they think they're supposed to do something, or out of some social programming or norm, or out of survival, or I want to be famous, or I need to fulfill this need. An unconscious creator is not really in charge and mindful, or maybe, let's say, doesn't have a lot of intentionality in their creations. So as we expand our awareness as meditators, as just spiritual beings growing, the more awareness we have, the more conscious of a creator we become. So it's not a switch of go from unconscious creator to conscious creator. It's, I would say it's much more of a spectrum, right? It's much more of an opening that never ends. So there's no delineation of you are now conscious from unconscious. That's kind of silly. We're all attempting to become more conscious. That being said, there are definitely some tools and some practices that we can, integrate into our life and our world so that we can become more conscious creators. And whatever we're doing in the world, we do more mindfully. You could be a doctor, you could be a stay-at-home parent, you could be a caretaker of some kind, and a scientist or a meditation teacher or a writer on Substack, and you could be doing it consciously or unconsciously. And so
Mm.
that's the work. And my job as a teacher is to help people become conscious of what they're unconscious of, maybe do some healing on some of those, pain spots, stuckness, old beliefs that hold them back and hurt them, and help them come into a place of awareness and enlightenment, maybe, and create from that energy and from that space.
And so, what would you say is the connection between inner stillness and outer creation?
Well, that is definitely one of the most important components of being a conscious creator is having that awareness of the inner stillness, even when there's outer movement.
Mm.
Um, you can imagine somebody maybe who I always think of the Far East, like someone who's practicing the Tao Te Ching, something like that, where they're, or a samurai in Japan, where they're moving out in the world, maybe swinging their sword, symbolic sword these days, but they're doing it with intentionality. There's a stillness inside of them and an awareness. And so, whether you're writing a blog, whether you're doing a video or a podcast or coaching or teaching, there's an awareness in you of that stillness. So it's like the world moves, the world spins, but at the center of the world or of your world, there is a deep stillness, no matter whatever happens. And that's what the meditator really learns to anchor into.
Mm. Oh, so that just takes me to you have a wonderful way of bringing lightness to some kind of really heavy things. And so, could we just touch on shame? Just that little
Mhm.
thing that David Hawkins said is the closest thing to death, I think he said about shame. And so at the weekend, I kind of fell into what I can only describe as a shame swamp, as it were, and it was rather brutal. And then all of those like kind of voices come in saying, all of the who do you think you are when you've got such deeply ingrained patterns that come up like this from time to time to be creating or guiding or teaching or any of those things when sometimes I can find myself off center. Have you ever found yourself in a shame swamp? And if so, how have you kind of continued to walk through it without getting sucked, without losing your
Yeah,
voice?
absolutely. Of course I have. I'm a human being. I believe like the rest of
Really?
us. Yeah. Again, let's start on the opposite end of the spectrum of shameless. It's far worse to be shameless than to experience shame. Now, of course, when we experience extreme shame, like you're describing, and then we get stuck or we, get lost in a whirlpool, we feel like we're drowning.
Oh.
That is unhealthy. But sometimes a little bit of healthy shame does keep society on track.
Yeah.
uh, I think we all have seen characters in the world who are shameless, and that also doesn't look right or feel good to do things without care, in a way, right? So, first of all, we don't want to over invalidate the feeling of shame. So, there's the shame, and then there's the criticism of the shame. It's almost like shame's first cousin comes on in and adds piles on. And so, even when you share that question, I hear that energy of there's feeling shame that you're experiencing shame, and in that
Mm. Yeah.
there's a self criticism, like
Yeah.
it's a problem. So first, maybe we could reframe it. Like just imagine that you were, part of your soul's journey in this lifetime is to master shame. and really understand it and heal it and work through it and maybe help other people like you're doing right now also become aware of it and work through it. Now, if you were going to help other people become aware of it, heal it, and work through it, you would have to go through that journey yourself first. That's what makes a good teacher, as we all know. And so, from that framework, like, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you're being put through the ringer. It's part of your journey. And so now we can put down the self criticism and validate that this is a very important part of your journey. So, for example, if I was like, Suzy, one day you're going to help millions of people come out of shame, then was your journey of going through shame worth it? What would, I mean, I would guess your answer would be yes.
Yes, yes, I guess
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And so, what is our greatest pain, if we really heal it, can turn into our greatest gift to the world.
Mm.
And if we don't, we could become the evil, lost version of ourselves. Right.
Mm.
You know, you could have gone in the other direction from shame to shameless, and that would have been much scarier than a shameless
Susie with an
Suzy.
evil laugh. Or maybe I've already got an evil laugh. I don't know. Oh dear me.
Yeah, and just show up to Susie's classes, and she's like, "Shut the fuck up and write." Just
Meditate.
yeah,
Yeah.
close your eyes. Um, So
Yeah.
that's the first, before we even get into the shame itself and where it comes from and inspecting it and peeling the layers back, we want to start by reframing and validating. And so you've been on an incredible journey, coming out of a pretty intense religious background. I know this because you took my teacher training and we've talked about it. And so you've been on a heck of a journey coming out of shame. And I think and I would love for you to share, but a lot of people who've come out of some religious group or sect or intense family situation have to come out of that shame and go, what the heck was that? And how do I
Mm.
navigate the rest of my life?
Mm.
Is that
Yes.
your
I
experience?
think yes, it's a very, very, very intense experience, and it was 42 years of my life. And but also there's then the fear of putting shame on those still in, because I love them very, very much. I'm no better for having left, and they're no worse for being in, all of that. And so it's like I want to speak about how we can make the unconscious more conscious, moment by moment. And yet that's my journey. And yet it's sometimes there's a lot of fear around doing that, even kind of a thing, because I don't want to shame the
Them.
really yes, exactly. Yeah.
Well, I think we can delineate the difference between judgment and discernment. I think it's very valid to go, that's not okay, or that's crazy as hell, or that's abusive. And that doesn't have to be from a judgmental place, it's from a very rational, sober minded place. Not every behavior is equal. So
Mm.
you don't have to shame them, but that doesn't mean you can't look over there and go, that's fucking crazy. And just be honest about it. One of my old improv teachers, who I love dearly, she would have us just do the whole spectrum when we hit an energy like this. Like, what if you just went into the energy of like, I cannot stand those effing people and their stupidity, and just play the whole thing out, go from one end of the spectrum to the other, and just rage, whatever it is, experience the whole spectrum, which is what shame stops us from doing. Shame
Mm.
wants us to hold us into one place and
A
into
straight
one
jacket.
feeling, a straight jacket, right?
Mm.
It closes us in, and so it's not that it's right or wrong to rage or to be judgmental or to make fun of someone or totally embrace them and go, oh, I'm going to be the leader of this sect. I'm taking it on. It's mine. I'm the queen. Put on the hat. You do the whole spectrum, almost in an experiential way, and then you come out of it, and there's no part of that spectrum you're not neutral to. So if you don't become neutral and come out of something, there's a couple things that happen. One, you become it. So you do become the leader of the sect and you take it on, and you never get out. In your whole life, you're imprisoned to that religion or whatever it is, that guru, or lots of people get spiraled out into
Mm.
some weird thing.
Yep.
Or you go like a teenager and you rebel and you become the exact opposite. So I'm going to be the atheist, loner, never part of a group. Screw that. I'm on a mission to burn it all down. You can totally be in resistance and go to the other end of the spectrum, or you can get caught in. I'm never going to say anything because it's scary. What if they come after me? So I don't like it, but I'll be meek. So we don't want to be stuck on any part of that spectrum. And so we need to maybe experience it all and find a sense of neutrality and acceptance. And only then can we really find our right course of action and our truth. So your truth might be calling it out and going, that's an abusive thing. It's not okay. I want to help as many people out of it as possible. Or it might be, hey, I'm done with that. I don't need to fight them or shine a light. I'm going this whole other path and I'm going to help people in a different way. But the truth of your path has to come out of being neutral and accepting
Mm.
and maybe experiencing that whole spectrum. So I say all that to say we all have a version of what you're going through, but like most people it's less extreme. Some people it's just a
Mm.
family dynamic they're coming out of, or their cultural dynamic, or something like that, or maybe someone spent time in the military and there was some programming that they're coming out of. So it's not all as extreme as yours, Susie, but we all do have to face whatever programming structure we've been given by society that maybe doesn't fit
Mm.
us. And then are we going to be in resistance to it or become it, or are we going to grow out of it and then
Mm.
forge your own path? And that maybe is a good conscious creator.
Mm. Uh, oh, I'm so appreciative for all of that, and I think that's the kind of the beauty in a way of what I've experienced is that it's kind of 10x. So there's nothing that you don't question. You kind of question everything, and that's the in a way that's the kind of the wonder of it all. The journey that I get to go on. Sometimes
Yeah.
it's very messy and definitely not Instagrammable.
Again, I would say embrace the part of if we're talking Susie talk. This is welcome to Susie talk. uh, if we're talking Susie talk, I would say embrace this really messy, uninstagrammable Susie and own it and just explore that whole area. But then also embrace the really clear-minded, confident, grounded Susie that can see a clear path and not let other people's shame stop her, and not in a fake way. It's got to be real. And that's why I always say experience the whole spectrum. So who are the creepiest people in the world? I'm asking you a question.
Oh,
You don't have to answer that.
yeah, thank God.
But
Oh,
to me, the creepiest and the most untrustworthy people in the world are people who've always lived on just one part of the spectrum. So maybe they've been very religious their whole life, as you've experienced, or whatever it is, they haven't explored the depth and width of life. And maybe they're always like, I'm pious, I'm a good person, I've always been a good person, I would never do anything. They don't, their shadow is so lost in that closet and down so many levels, locked away in so many safes. They're so far away from it that eventually the toothpaste has to get out of the bottle, and it does in a very weird way. And so people who face their pain, right? People who actually face their demons. I mean, the path of the Buddha is him sitting under the Bodhi tree, and Mara, this demon-like, let's say, symbol of illusion, comes along and throws all of this stuff at the Buddha. And because he's faced himself, none of it takes him for a ride. Right. So he's not corrupt by lust or money or power or fame or ego, whatever it is, because he looked at himself and experienced all those aspects. And he, if you look at the Buddha's life, he went from extreme wealth as a prince to extreme poverty as a monk, and he experienced that whole spectrum of avoiding death and pain to completely facing death and pain. And then he found what was called the middle way, and we all have to do that in our own way. And so, like I said, the creepy people are the ones that never do that, and they pigeonhole themselves into one belief system, and they don't question and one worldview, and that's when things get really weird. And for me, the more seriously a person takes themselves and their view of the world, the more creepy they become to me too. When they overbelieve their own view of the world, that always ends dangerously.
Mm. And it's interesting there because I feel like sometimes then there can be us. Yeah, sometimes there feels like there's so many subtle layers of shame within the spiritual kind of awareness, awakening journey, and that some will think, I know I'm more conscious than you are, I know more than you do, I've done more
Mm.
courses than you do, I've read more books and all of the things, and then feels like it's a kind of a sense of competition, and it makes me feel not good because that's because that was my kind of life really, kind of judging, very judgmental energy,
You came out of the, what was it, the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Jehovah's
um
Witnesses?
yes,
Yeah. And so that you're saying that's what you experienced with them?
very yes, it was very kind of very judged on your works, which I guess is why I materialized so much poor health, because it was kind of my way out in a way, because you can't, it was very high demand religion,
Wow. So you
yeah.
got yourself sick to avoid some of it.
Yeah, that's my sense, is that yeah, narcolepsy just
Wow.
takes you out, a way of not being here in a way, because there's so little choice.
Wow. So you would just fall asleep like anywhere at any moment.
Yes, that was my life. Was
Wow.
I say that I was asleep for 42 years, quite literally and metaphorically. But
Yeah, I don't want to make, I have no idea on the medical side of it or the physiological side, but just even symbolically to not be able to handle something and then literally go unconscious. Because,
all of the
when we feel
time.
physical pain, when we hit an extreme, the body, we go unconscious because we can no longer, there's a threshold of pain. And so
Yeah,
you're saying that you would literally just pass out throughout the day all the time because you couldn't
all
handle.
all day, every day. I suspect from school, but from high school, but I never got a diagnosis until I was early 20s. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What was one of the core energies that you were so in resistance to, that you found so off-putting that you wanted to be unconscious?
Um, the thing that comes up a lot for me is, and I feel a lot of emotion, even, which tells me it's perhaps what was one of the biggest challenges, was being in the world, but to be absolutely no part of it. So it was, you're kind of shut down in so many respects. You're kind of I was kind of, you're in your community, but not to experience life outside of that, where everyone thinks and believes the same thing. And so now when I kind of live from a much more open heart, I just sometimes am overtaken with emotion because of the beauty of that.
Yeah, so there was a lack of freedom and a lot of control.
A lot of control. Mm.
Hmm. Um, all
I mean, I
right.
couldn't have gone to university or anything like that. My
Wow.
if I'd have gone to university, my dad would have like lost his privileges within the congregation and things, thus shaming the whole family, not just me.
Not just you, entire clan shaming.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
if you go to the university, you might be exposed to other ideas.
that's it. Yeah, you're gonna cultivate
Yeah.
critical thinking, and ooh, don't want that.
God forbid you think. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, it's so overt and blatant. It's kind of like satirical in a way when you look at it from a distance, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It's wild. Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing that you came out the other side. And now you're on this journey of finding freedom and expression without anyone controlling it.
Yeah, what a wild ride. Um,
And now
no,
you
go
have
on.
all the tools to start your own cult.
You speak about, thank you for taking us off on that tangent that I didn't know we were going to go on, but I'm going to have a word with you later. You speak in one of your episodes on the Conscious Creator episode about unicorns and workhorses. People will have to go and listen to the full episode to find out what you are, if David is a workhorse or a unicorn. And I would love, this is a subject that really, really fascinates me. Where do you think strategy ends and energy begins? Because you summed it up really well with your quote about your friend Sarah Blondin, who's another biggie on Insight Timer. You said that she's this incredible confluence of forces, timing, and energy. So strategy versus energy, where are we at?
Yeah, fantastic question for all of us semi-conscious creators.
Please don't say strategy. I might have a narcolepsy attack.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Mid
go on.
podcast narcolepsy attack. Once we get into the weeds of creating. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if I doubt Sarah would label herself the way I did. I just that's totally me. That's just how I experience her, and I think a lot of people do. And if you haven't listened to her meditations, they're absolutely beautiful. She's just got an incredible energy. But I am someone that works hard. I work hard. Like uh, some people they just drop their first album and it's platinum, and it's like, born with raw talent. Who knows what karma? And for me, it's always been a lot of work. Even my meditation practice, just years and years of hours of sitting and sitting. I but I do want to preface though with that can change. So, there's a saying overnight success takes about 10 years. And so maybe there is a phase where you put in crazy effort and mastery and discipline, and then it becomes a flow and easy. Just like maybe if you're a pianist, right, or some kind of musician,
Mm.
and you put in the energy and time until you master it, and now you're in flow. I think a lot of teachers are like, "Hey, just get into flow and just manifest," but the person hasn't put in the work. So that's a stage and a phase that you can reach of mastery, but you do have to put in the energy and effort to get there. So maybe even my own idea of workhorses versus unicorns is only accurate to a certain extent. Maybe you turn into a unicorn one day after years of being a workhorse. Maybe that's more accurate. I think I framed it that way because it's just a self-assessment tool of, are you someone that needs a lot of structure and discipline and strategy as you go step by step? Or are you somebody that, like, you have the Midas touch and you just touch stuff and there it is, and it's just turning into gold and flowing. The vast majority of us are the first kind, where we have to put in enormous effort and energy and attention. Um,
Mm.
and so, and if you're listening to a podcast like this, you're probably the first kind. You're trying to figure it out and do the work and grow in that way. Um, and so, I'm definitely, I'll label myself more of a workhorse, but you know, these days riding it a little bit more smoothly now that I have a team of people that help me, and I'm very comfortable with what I'm teaching and who I am. It's a lot more smooth than it used to be. And so that, I think, is just a matter of time, energy, effort, and hopefully just a little tiny drop of mastery,
Mm.
like just a little cinnamon on the latte.
So that's yeah, yeah.
It's a tiny bit.
Nice.
I forgot your question. I think I missed.
Okay. The strategy versus energy. No, I think you answered it very
Okay.
well. Yeah, I think it's what's really interesting to me is how last year I found that very, very depressing, that whole 10-year thing. And yet now it feels like, yeah, that's probably about right. I always remember a wonderful study that I had was done with how between three groups of people, your average person, entrepreneurial spirit, and addicts. And they were asked how far they look into the future. And the average person said, I think, oh, you tell me, how long do you think they were looking into the future? Your average Joe.
Like, are you talking in years?
Yeah. Well,
In
depends.
years or
Not,
depends? Yeah, I can see
not
the average person, I don't even know, months to a couple of years out in the addict same day,
very much so. And then the entrepreneur was
probably 5 to 10 years.
yeah, 10 years, yeah. And so
Yeah.
I feel like much less resistance to that now. Thank God.
Well, think about it. My dad was an engineer, and he spent 40 years designing skyscrapers in New York City, like some of the world's tallest buildings. And could you imagine if people came along and like, hey, we need that done in 4 hours?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
irrational and absurd. But for some reason, when we look at our own life and success, we want it like it's like a movie, like you're gonna get the winning lottery ticket, or
Mm.
overnight you're gonna meet your soulmate without doing any inner work on your attachment style or pain.
Mm.
And so some people are dreamy because it's a way to circumvent feeling and facing the pain of where you are right now.
Yeah.
And like you could be in a place of I'm broke, I'm stuck, I'm alone. You know, the way to get out of that is to face it and then build the skyscraper brick by brick over time. And if you want overnight success and I just want out of the pain and I don't want to do the work, I mean, that's going to be a rough road. And I have seen people spin out in that and create illusion beyond illusion, and, illusions wrapped in illusions and around why they're not moving forward. And then some people go into blaming the world. So I'll just blame everyone else. I'll
My
become a
past.
conspiracy theorist, whatever it is, or I'll blame myself. The attack goes outward or the attack goes inward. And you know, you're not moving forward at all. You're just lost in illusion. You're lost in your head and you're not making real progress. And by no means does everyone make progress in life. A lot of people, from what I could tell, kind of spin, get stuck, or get complacent. And I think it's probably one of the reasons back in the day the monks, maybe they still today do this, but they would have to sleep on hard surfaces. I remember I was in India. I went to some really ancient monastery that had become just like a museum site, and you would see where the monks would sleep just on this stone ground, and it was to not get too comfortable, because if you got too comfortable, you would stop moving. And in the Western world, that is a lot of people's crux. They're that's how they get stuck. Everything becomes really comfortable and good enough and nice, and I'm going to live in that comfort, and not move forward. So if you're listening to this, you're like, oh, this hurts. Then yeah, there's something to face there.
You just remind me of a quote that I came across yesterday that said, I wonder whether I can find it. It's about that most people will. Oh, I'll put it in the notes underneath it. It was that most people will never find the greatest inner depths of themselves. They'll never exhaust the deep inner resources that we hold, because for all of the reasons that you've just listed. Yeah.
A teacher of mine would say the path to enlightenment is strewn with the dead bodies of those who gave up too soon.
Mm. Oof.
Yeah.
um, I hope not to be a dead body. If you, one of the things that can be a challenge is when we're putting up the scaffolding. We're sitting with the gunk and the discomfort, which can be quite intense sometimes. We're creating and finding the courage to put ourselves out there, and it just feels like for a long time there's no budge or movement, and that we are speaking into the void. What would you say, if anything, needs to change there, or is it just a matter of keeping on plodding? What's your thoughts?
Well, I do think it could be a combination of strategy and energy. I've seen a lot of people with amazing strategy. They've got all the coaches and Instagram posts that look correct, and you've taken all the courses on how to market, but they don't have the energy because they wanted the success overnight and they didn't put in the decade of or whatever 10,000 hours. I'm just making that up, but whatever they
Yeah.
needed to put in for mastery. And actually, most of the kind of wellness space is full of that, of what I just said, of people not putting in the energy for the mastery and wanting the money or the attention, the career, whatever it is, too quickly. And then you get a lot of shallow, look at me energy. Let me give you this little lame tidbit on how you're supposed to think positively about the world or manifest. And it all makes us go,
It does me.
yeah, it's like, how come in each video your hat gets bigger? Like, or whatever, like every video is more cleavage or,
Maybe that's where I'm going wrong.
yeah, what does that have to do? That's where,
Oh, maybe I need to show more tits.
Should that have been in my teacher training, Susie? This is how you slowly reveal yourself to get more views.
There's there's a layer of clothing that gets lost with each video. Oh,
Strip meditation. Um, yeah, and I say that because I see it all of the time because it's a much easier path than doing the deliberate conscious work. And part of that is facing the pain of not having what you want right now. A lot of that expression is I want what I want right now. And even the teachings become I'm going to help you get what you want. So if you see the teaching of I'm going to help you get what you want right now, find an exit and run. Okay, that's just that like I'm gonna help you fulfill your desire right now is that's the addict really of what you were describing. And I was asking this question to the Insight Timer group: is life about getting what you want? And that question needs to be inspected instead of just chasing every desire that you have. Right? That was the path of the Buddha. You backed up and said, "Do I chase desires and avoid pain?" That's what most humans spend their entire life doing, chasing pleasure, avoiding pain. Let me inspect that. And just because I want to do that as an animal, right, being, is that the right path here? And so we have to step back and really look at that closely. I don't know anyone who just went out and chased their desires, got them, and then was happy. You usually they get them and then they find an emptiness or a misery or it all turns on them because they did not do the inner inspection and inner work. And that's where the rub is. So when people are teaching, just think positively and manifest what you want, it's like, okay, but what if you're a shithead and shithead gets everything they want? Is that really going to lead to some greater fulfillment or awareness? No, it's going to just reflect back to you that you've been a shithead. and then and then maybe you move forward. And so maybe that is what a person has to do. They have to go fulfill their desires and experience that there's an emptiness there. And that might actually be their path. So I wouldn't even tell someone necessarily don't do it. Maybe they need to do it. But if they're
Yeah.
meditating with me and they want to be more conscious, then I do offer, hey, let's inspect that and see what's really behind it.
Mm. I am so aware of your time because you've been so generous. But there is just one question which kind of ties into what you've just spoken of there is that, we are in saturated with content. And if I don't feel a nudge or a kind of a little heart whisper to kind of write something or post something, I just don't. But feels like there needs to be a balance there between, building a business and also not just adding to the noise. I would love to for you to speak to that.
A couple things. One is you don't need to reach everyone. You just need to reach the people that are really in resonance with you and your work. So when you frame it as, I don't want to add to the noise, you're kind of thinking of all of the thoughts and voices in the world conglomerated. And you don't need to do that because in reality, you wouldn't go to the cafe in your neighborhood and go, well, I don't want to talk to anyone because I'm adding to the noise of this cafe. That would be silly. And
Right.
so think of it in the same way. You've got your kind of digital world full of the people that you vibe with and that would enjoy you. And you're not adding noise, you're adding perspective and energy and insight, creativity. So I wouldn't worry, I would toss that idea. That might just be a kind of a sense of self-criticism or feeling like you're
Shame.
shame, not good enough to add your energy to a conversation because there's not that many people on earth that have your kind of experience of coming out of such an intense religious cult and all of the baggage that came with that and healing from that. I mean, adding your perspective and experience to the world is invaluable. There's
Mm.
so many people who need it, who need that help, who are also coming out of something similar. So, in terms of service to the world, I think it's a great service that you share your story and your journey and help other people through it too. So, I would let that, I would let that part go, and then find this is the art of mastery of refining your expression into the world and what you really want to share. And it'll change over time and you'll get feedback and iterate, right? All of that is it's alive and it always change. So who knows what Suzy's work is going to look like in 5 or 10 years. But if you don't do anything, I can guarantee what it'll look like. It'll look like what it looks like today.
I think you have actually just covered it, but it was just a final question about what would you, if you could magically whisper surreptitiously into the ears of people who have, really have a wild inner knowing that they've got a lot to offer and to give, but it's somewhere holding themselves back or feel that it's been better said somewhere else. What would you say to them? What would you whisper to them in one of your sleep meditations as they drift away?
Oh my God, you are hilarious.
Ah!
I first I try to stay in my lane as a meditation teacher. So I would always start by inspecting that energy of there's even in the inherent in your question in there is like some self-doubt. Like I want to create something and share with the world, but I have some kind of self-doubt or lack of self-worth. That's where I would start. I would inspect that and sit with that, work through some of those layers, do some self-healing. So it's two-sided. The one side is you introspect and heal, and the other side is you keep creating anyway. And there's a muscle that it's like public speaking. If you're like, I'm afraid of public speaking and I'm not going to speak until I'm healed, you will never be a public speaker. The only way to heal is by getting on stage and speaking over and over and over, and every time you work that muscle and shed a layer of fear, there is no other way. And so yet you do the inner work and you do the outer expression and they're symbiotic. They feed each other. Every time you express yourself out into the world through whatever medium you choose, the muscle grows, the confidence grows, the energy grows, and you do the inner healing work. I've seen a lot of people, they obsess over the inner healing work and they use it as a reason to not get out there yet because they're not healed enough. It's almost like dating. It's like, I can't date yet. I've got more and more to work on. 5 years goes by, 10, 20, and you realize it's just an excuse. And so you have to find that balance, I think, and do both. And they really do carry each other.
The whole healing journey can sometimes be an excuse not to live. I feel
Yeah.
it's like a way out, if you will. It's like yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that you touched on that, actually.
I wasn't in a like a cult, but when I went to school in Hawaii, there were it had a tinge of that sometimes, the way it was run and managed, and just the amount of control. And that was part of the recipe of like, it was always, you're not ready, you're not good enough yet, you're stuck on something. And I realized after 7 years and watching other people who had been there for 10 or 15, and they were still being told that. And there was never a moment of like, go out, teach, you know, it was a form of using pain as control,
Right.
a way to control. And when I started teaching, Susie, this is pretty wild, but when I put myself out there in the world on Insight Timer and other places, I got huge blowback from that group. And they were like, you can't do that. You can't go out into the world and be seen in that way. That's not good. And it was like a form of control, and also some fear. And they were like, you stay in our little group, you never show yourself to the world, you let us continue to manage the way this all works, and also, by the way, stay poor. uh Got to stay poor, got to stay
Yeah.
poor, because that's pious,
Yeah.
and it helps
Humility.
us. Yeah, it helps us control you.
Mhm.
And I'm very lucky I had the support to be able to break out of that, and also got lucky teaching and reaching an audience of, a wide audience that helped me out of that as well. But looking back, it was precarious, and I could have easily gotten stuck there for life. And so
Mhm.
I say that, you know, to all of you who are listening, and maybe you have gotten stuck in that way a little bit, move forward despite what any person tells you. Just because they have more experience than you, or you feel they're senior to you, or they have some magical powers, I would push them aside and I would walk your own journey. The whole point of the journey is to learn to take the bumpers off the alley, the lane, and walk your own journey at a certain point. And that's
Yeah.
scary and it's dangerous, and it's also necessary. So I went through it, absolutely went through it. And what's funny is that many of the teachers there left as well and now work with me. And we're like, hey, that wasn't cool. This is better.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that
Yeah.
was also very validating at the end of the day, to not just leave a group and then be ostracized, but actually to pull a lot of the other people out of it with me and get them into a healthy financial place and living as grounded teachers in the world, and having their own will over their destiny. So that was another really cool layer for me. That was like, holy crap, I think I took this one to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah, that what you described there feels like a lot of learned helplessness, learned hopelessness that's kind of imbued into you. And certainly that was my experience. You just go through life with the stabilizers on the bike. You never get to actually ride the bike, you know, on your own and fall off, but learn from it, kind of a thing. It's like that learned helplessness.
Yeah, you know it better than most. Tell me about I want to hear about your blog, about your Substack.
Substack. So I write all about the art of expression and yeah, working through the fear, working through the shame, working through all of the layers in order to slowly put our magic out into the world, which has been a real rocky journey for me.
And are you sharing about your life story through that church?
I have done, yeah, I've done a fair old bit of that. Yeah, I think I started the first month of your school actually last February doing that, and that even that it's been a real challenge, you
Do,
know.
do you mean do you mean the teacher training?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So you started the blog in the first month of teacher training, the Substack?
I already had the Substack, but I started I would say I started really being very consistent and showing up in a bigger way. The start of meditation teacher training, yeah, which
That's
was
amazing.
epic, by the way. Everyone should do David's meditation teacher training.
Unless you don't want to be a meditation teacher.
Well, there is that little thing.
If you don't want to be a meditation teacher, then go to dental school or law
Yeah,
school,
maybe,
whatever you want to do with your
Ah,
life. Uh, could I also ask you? I know are you good with time?
yeah, yeah. As long as you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm taking over the interview. Can I? No, but I
Yeah.
really, uh, uh, I'm prodding you a little bit because I feel like you're shy with your journey, and I just so badly want to hear it, and I think everyone else does too. Like when people make podcasts about Scientology and everyone's like, "Oh my God, please tell us what is it like in there? That sounds crazy." I just
Did you
um,
meet Tom Cruise?
yeah, and one of my one of my co-teachers, Scott Stabile, and he writes about this in his book, Big Love. He was in a cult for 13 years, and he has an incredible journey going through it and coming out of it. And this topic so fascinates people of how somebody, well, you were born into it, so it's different. It's not like you chose to go into a group. You were literally born into the group. And so to be born into something and get out of it is way harder than to go in and come out, because you have a memory of what life was like before you were
Mm.
in, which you didn't. Can I just ask you, what was the moment where you're like, oh, I got to get out of here?
I don't think there was one moment. I would say there was kind of rumblings as from around about 2018, I would say. There was just a lot of, I felt very, very, very disillusioned. And then 2019, towards the end of 2019, I stopped going to meetings, and then COVID hit. And I think that was my way out for sure, because that was the first time then I was plucked up the courage to really, really question. And I remember the first time I watched an activist's video on YouTube, and I was shaking, like, because I was thinking, am I one of the Bible verses is, don't allow the Satan to crouch at the door. And I was thinking, am I allowing Satan to crouch at the door by watching this? I remember the fear was so palpable. That was the summer of 2020. Yeah. And
Wow,
then,
that's not long ago.
yeah,
Wow.
so November 2020, I wrote a letter, a very kind letter saying that, I wish you well, but I'm going to follow my own path. Um,
When you say there were rumblings, like what did you see or experience in the group that you're like, I don't know about this?
there was a lot of it was the abuse, quiet abuse in marriages, and where the female wasn't believed, or child abuse, people who had experienced really shocking levels of child abuse, and they weren't believed or were discouraged from going to authorities or for speaking out about it. Yeah, I would say that was the biggest catalyst for me. And then, of course, then once you're out, there's no part of the doctrines that you don't question, and you begin to realize, oh my God, what else isn't true then, and what else? And then you realize the whole thing just kind of collapses like a pack of cards.
Oh my gosh. Wow, wow, wow. Eh, can I just ask one last follow-up question? When you saw some of these people being abused, I mean, I'm assuming some of them were your friends.
Yeah,
Did you ever reach out to them and say, "Do you think this is okay?" Or was there
yeah,
any of
they're
that
still in.
communication? They
Actually,
couldn't
not
hear
all
it.
of them, not all of them, but
Yeah.
yes, of course, yeah, there was a lot of talk over the years, and a lot of just disquieting, if ever you were questioned the way things were handled, if there's no question of, let's bring in some experts from outside of the religion as to how we can protect ourselves from predators, how we can protect our children. But when that is an absolute no, you have to question, well, why would you not want to protect your children? Why is it yeah, there was so many things like that, but the fear of questioning was, so tremendous. I can't even, it's very difficult to express the levels of fear worked through, especially as a female. So for example, I had 40 every single week for all of my life, there was public speaking classes as part of the meetings. So I have such a wealth of knowledge about public speaking, but as a female, I wasn't actually allowed to, you know,
Oh
uh,
my gosh.
do the male parts, the teaching parts and things. So just so much fear to work through, and continues. When every time I guide a meditation, kind of lead something, there's a lot of a lot of fear to work through here.
I can imagine from all of that program and abuse, right? You go to teach, and then all of that energy comes, the water comes rushing in. You can't do this. You're a woman. You're not good enough.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can imagine all of that coming in. If it was, if I was struggling with something like that, working on teaching meditation, I would talk about that topic in and of itself, and the naming of it and the sharing of the experience itself, it would free you of some of the energy as you discuss it.
mm.
That might be an interesting.
Mm.
That's why I'm taking you down this line of questioning as a meditation teacher that's growing into it. Gosh, I feel like you doing a course on working through shame would be so powerful, so
Mm.
powerful,
I have
and sharing your own stories. Yeah,
yeah, I have a letter in sat in my drafts in Substack at the moment on shame that I just keep putting off. But I definitely yeah. After that spiral at the weekend, and it's funny what you say, because after that it was a very, very rough weekend, and then I went and did a meditation yesterday, and it was in a way it was really, really helpful. It actually helped me yesterday in that, because I felt like I can't even put into words why I feel like yesterday, remarkably, I went into that meditation and I felt the calmest that I ever have in leading anything, which is weird
wonderful.
given
That's
the
so cool.
weekend that it was. Yeah.
Sometimes before we take a step, the energy gets worse. It
Mm.
bubbles to the surface, and a teacher of mine would say it's like we hit a wall and we think we're stuck, but that's actually the moment we're about to take a huge step. So, if we so choose, if we're conscious enough to go, wow, there's a big energy here that I'm ready to work through, versus, oh, this feels bad, so I'm stuck, so I'm going to retreat. So the conscious
Mm.
creator, meditator, person interested in enlightenment, where we started this journey, takes it as an opportunity. And this goes for all of life. There are people, they hit resistance and they recoil. And there are people in life, they hit resistance and they go, wow, there's something juicy here. I'm ready to take a big step and work through this. So there's an attitude shift, I think, that needs to occur. And shame is let's call it like an energy of freezing. Shame freezes us in
Yeah.
place. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to stop
Keep us
you
safe.
for moving. Yeah, exactly. And fear, its best friend, is right there with it. Fear of being
Mm.
seen, right? And so, what is the opposite of that? It's unfreezing and being seen. So
Mm.
that is the call. That's the journey of getting unfrozen, unstuck, and letting yourself be seen, and then on a deeper level, probably letting yourself be loved, because we want to be seen so we can also be loved. And if you're born a sinner and you're born a bad person and your whole life is about redeeming yourself, at what point are you ever loved? And then the only love
Mm.
you get is from an invisible being,
Mm.
but not from a human being. And that
Mm.
is a horrible punishment, I think, in a way to go through life, and a way to keep somebody on a treadmill of like, you want love. If
Mm.
you ever want love, you have to behave the way I say. If you ever want my love or God's love or the world's love, you behave this way. And there's nothing more demoralizing and yeah, shameful than that. And so, I mean, I think you're doing a great job busting out of that. And there's probably a lot of people who are on a similar journey. And when it comes
Mm.
to abuse, and this is all different forms of subtle abuse to overt abuse, you have to call it out and go, that is really not okay. I've seen spiritual people do the same thing, and abuse is abuse. What's not okay is not okay. And when you call it, you have to call it out, and get out of that energy. And a lot of people don't have the support system to get out. Last question with this: how did you get out without the support system?
Um, how did I get out? I think once you once you realize it's not real and the Armageddon isn't coming, I don't think there isn't really a way that you can. People say that, oh, you're so brave and so courageous, but there's not really any how you can't carry on. You can't. There's no way you can pretend. So it was just a matter of getting out. It was, yeah. Also, I
Wait.
have a very, very beautiful mum who's still in,
Ah,
but has been very, very, she right from the get-go, she said, I will never, ever, ever shun you or cut you off.
thank you,
And
Mom.
I'm incredibly grateful to her because I know that not all would have done that. I know that some would have been a lot more, you know.
Yes, great, great mom.
Mm.
What Armageddon?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, but next episode.
Wait, what day is it? How much time do I have?
I hate you.
Now we're experiencing the spectrum. No, no, I
Oh.
didn't know that. I did. Okay, no, I think I have
Mm.
heard that. So you're saying there's like an end of days and you have to behave a certain way to be in the good group when that comes. Is
Yeah,
that
I,
the
I remember exactly where I was in the family home when I was about 5 or 6, I would say. And I remember I remember thinking, oh my God, so if I make a mistake or do something, wrong, I either will die at Armageddon, which is any day now, or you will lose all of your friends and family. And I remember thinking, the way I don't think it was cognitive thought, but I remember feeling I couldn't bear the shame. So it wasn't the death, it wasn't the losing family or friends. It was I couldn't bear the shame, and I suspect it was from that moment on that I thought I'm going to make sure I am acceptable, palatable, good, don't mess up. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I've ever made the connection with the shame before.
wow, that is such an insight. And then when it
Mm,
comes to creativity, I can't even imagine how much that would stifle your
mm.
your expression of yourself and your creativity.
I can't even imagine. I don't think I think I will be trying to articulate it for the rest of my days. Kind of
Mm.
the levels of um the levels of pain to kind of reach. I remember there's a wonderful book, I can't remember who wrote it, called The Drama Triangle. It's only a little book, and there's a chapter there on religious conditioning. And she says, once you've given your authentic self away, it's very, very difficult to get that back. And for me, I think, but I don't even know what my authentic self was, because you're born into, fourth generation into this. And so how do you find your way back? And that will be my journey.
Your journey,
Remembering
yes.
who the heck we are as souls, essentially.
So your journey is finding your way back to who you really are.
Yeah.
Now
Yay.
that sounds like a Substack article, you know, article I can roll with and
Um,
read. Holy cow, you are one of the most fascinating people, Suzy. I mean, your
oh,
journey is truly incredible. I mean, what you've come out of is just wild. And so, man, you have more creative material than most human beings could ever dream of.
uh,
You know,
now
uh,
I'm squirming.
well, I
Insult me.
and so quickly, yeah, push me back down so I feel like what I was used to
Better.
growing up.
Oh dear. Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit. I spent a couple of years in Los Angeles, which can be kind of very fake, and it's because there's Hollywood and everyone's going there to be someone, and there's always this like satirical aggrandizement of suffering, like, oh, you went to South America for 6 months, and oh my God, let's write a movie about it, you know. For- Whereas
Oh.
you didn't have running water for a day, you know. Uh, whereas you have truly been through the ringer and beyond and come out the other side. That's a powerful thing that you get to. ride that wave and help other people and use that for, you have so much to mold with your creativity from here on out. So I'm excited for
Mm.
this podcast and for you to share all of your journey with people.
Yeah, that you volunteered me for. Yeah, you said before you were sharing your story. I'm like, oh, I don't think I'd signed up for sharing my story today, David.
Who did you? That's so rude of me to ask you questions that were not pre-approved.
Yeah.
That's not,
Oh, dear.
this made no one may maybe no one will ever hear this. Susie's gonna cut it out.
That's it. Yeah, it's going to be heavily edited.
Send me a stern email.
I'm going to shun you.
Shame me.
Oh, dear me. Final question.
Yeah.
What are you going to take back control? What are you personally being called to create next, or what are you feeling nudged to express into the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. The Conscious Creator podcast is brand new, so I've been really enjoying just giving some tips and advice for people like me, but earlier on the journey, who are creating, on how to navigate that whole world, because it can be very daunting, as you know. How do I start an email list or a podcast or write a book or reach an audience? So there's so many moving parts. Um, and then I very oddly have a company of virtual assistants. So the woman Jonah, who I've worked with for like 10, 11 years at this point,
Love Jonah.
yeah, she's so
Shout out
wonderful.
to Jonah.
Shout out to Jonah. She had a New Year's resolution a few years ago to start a virtual teams company in the Philippines. That's where she lives. And I was like, well, why are we always working on my dreams? That seems unfair. So we created the company she wanted. And basically we help other creators, find help with virtual assistants that they can afford, whether it's social media or their email list or their website management, graphic design, so that they could focus more on creating. And the goal is to help them make a living and be able to scale without spending a lot of money. Because, when I started, I didn't have two nickels to rub together. And I was like, I have no idea how to navigate this. And so it was a slow slog for sure. And now that I've learned kind of better, faster, easier ways, I like sharing that. And then if somebody needs that kind of like human resource help, we get to provide it, fulfill Jonah's dream, get my meditation teacher friends off my back, give them some
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah. How do I do this, David?
and so I get insane fulfillment out of giving people jobs. I mean, there is no better feeling in the world than knowing that somebody is paying their rent, feeding their kids, paying medical bills, because I was able to find them a job. I mean, I there's the most fulfilling freaking thing that you could imagine. We have a charity in Nepal for kids. We have an orphanage there where we support about 35 kids. It's called the Himalayan Children's Future Fund.org. And that is also very fulfilling. But getting someone to be in charge of their own destiny and have a job and pay their own way is, in some odd ways, even more fulfilling. And so that's been a part of my journey I didn't really expect. My brother's an entrepreneur, my uncle's an entrepreneur, my cousin's an entrepreneur, and so it does kind of run in the family. And there's something, one of my highest I think aspirations is always freedom of my time, of my energy, of where I want to travel, of who I want to be, not having a boss, nobody telling me what to do. I've been that way my entire life. The week I graduated college, I moved to Spain and taught English and then went on to India and beyond. And freedom was always a very, very important value for me. And so, like our virtual assistants in the Philippines, they're all work at home, stay at home moms, and they're free. They get to work their schedules, and like so there's my freedom, okay, on one dude, but then to get to pass that freedom along to other people is feels really, really cool too. um
Mm.
and so like we don't like with the virtual teams company, I've never monitored an hour of Jonah's work. they work the hours they want, so we find them a client that fits their hours, and we don't go, give me the timesheet, show me every minute you worked. I cannot stand that energy. It's like, no, you get the tasks done that you're supposed to, just like all of us, and be free. And just so, like, to pass that freedom along feels really, really good too. And being
Mm.
entrepreneurial and being in charge of my own destiny, to an extent, obviously, all of that just feels really, really good. And it's
Mm.
challenging to do that and be a meditation teacher. It's kind of, there's a lot to juggle there, but I also appreciate that challenge. And so leaning in ways that maybe my teachers never did, like, my teachers were never entrepreneurs and never did any of this stuff, so that felt a little bit almost like shame, like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm doing this other thing. I'm supposed to only do this one thing. So I had to work through that too, and
Mm.
realize, no, this is my passion and my path, and I'm totally okay with it. So I've been thoroughly enjoying that. Yeah. So I hope that answers that.
I love that because the passion oozes through, and I feel like if there's no passion, it's like it's dead, like flogging a dead horse, really, isn't it? It's the passion has to be there, and yeah, it's wonderful. Just to anyone that gets excited when they're talking about what they're creating in the world is just it's lovely, isn't it? It's lovely to see that
Yeah, so
effervescence.
the goal is not money, it's freedom. And I think a lot of people confuse these two things and go, I need this much money. And it's like, no, you need this much freedom. And so there are ways to
Mm.
engineer that. It's not all about money. Yes, you need a certain amount of money to maybe accomplish some of that. But for me, when I'm creating, I hold the quality of energy. I'm trying to hold the quality, that energy. That's the value. That's what I'm aspiring to. Money is not something to aspire to. It's just a medium, all right? Or getting a physical object. It's what is the am I looking for love? Am I looking for freedom? Am I looking for creativity? What is the deep need that I'm actually working on fulfilling here? And so for me, one of them is freedom. And keeping that in mind when you create as a creator is really valuable, because you don't know how it's going to unfold, but you know what the frequency and the energy you're looking for is. And so if you're so overly focused on survival, or I got to get this to get that, versus, no, this is the quality of energy I want to be in and put out in the world, that is when you're much more likely to create and receive from life. That's been my experience.
Oh, I love that. I think we
Yeah.
should just have a podcast-a-thon because I could just talk all day. But anyway, maybe we could raise funds while I was just talking. Anyway, so yes,
We'll go another hour if you donate $10.
that is yeah. Oh, dear me. Anyway, so your yeah, and the Conscious Creator podcast is fabulous. I love that you go into. There's a wonderful question on the one about, are you a solopreneur or an entrepreneur? And you say, do you want to be working on your business or in your business? And you go into that. But there's so much in there. So yes. And I'll put all of your links in there. Beneath. But yeah,
Thank you.
oh, thank you so much for your time, for being so generous with your time. So grateful. Thank you.
For you, Suzy, anything.
Oh, God bless you.
With that accent, who can say no? Yeah, I
Harry
mean,
Potter, you once called me. I'm still getting over that. Thanks. Thank you so much, David.
it's been a pleasure, Suzy. Thank you.